So, what do you do when you catch your spouse checking out a hot babe? Or
Uh-oh.
what do you do when your spouse mingles with someone else in a way that goes well beyond flirting? So, stay tuned for the Discover Your Amazing Edge podcast, Spicy Friday edition.
So how's everybody doing? I'm Zev Halpern here in Washington, D.C. Sarah, how things on the Puget Sound?
They're good. Doing a lot of paddleboarding on the Puget Sound and seeing dolphins.
Right.
Yeah. So, what are we going to get into today, Zeb? The nitty gritty. What are we
So
going to talk
basically,
about?
the title of this particular podcast, and it's something you and I have talked about many times, and just to let everybody know, Sarah and I wrote a book, and we wrote it 3,000 miles away. We still, after I don't know how many years, have not been in the same room with each other. We've only been Zoom rooms and StreamYard rooms, and it's kind of an interesting thing, and we get into some interesting topics, and this is one of them. We're both married. We both know the ins and outs of being married, and being faithful and caring and all that. And this is a big topic for a lot of our clients. Sarah and I see people whose relationships are in like total upheaval, upside down, or they've gone even beyond that, into infidelity, which Sarah deals with straight up. The book we wrote really is about personal development, and it was kind of an interesting thing for us because it was a exercise in our own life and what we've been through, and it kind of flowed out as we did it, but we did it on Zoom, and we got it published, and we did that and all that. So, but as far as this topic goes, we hook up in relationships, some of them long term, some of them short term, and we have discussions or we don't have discussions about what are the boundaries of these relationships. Um, can we talk to somebody else? Today we can talk globally to people all over the world, or we can talk to our next door neighbor, while we're watering the plants, and or go to a party and mingle and laugh and ha ha ha, and from across the room, perhaps your spouse is getting the wrong vibe, or maybe they're getting the right vibe because somebody's coming on, to your spouse, or all that. So everything gets all mixed up. Social media, people write, to each other. You can certainly get attracted to somebody on social media, and it can be a million miles away. It could be in outer space. But there's something about the chemistry of human beings. It just works that way, and we're only human, and we try, many of us, to do the right thing. But we want to meet people, and it's a social world, and a lot of people misconstrue what's going on. For instance, today I'm driving my wife and I to a doctor's appointment, and I'm driving. It's a beautiful day, gorgeous, sunny, 80 degrees. I'm driving along, and all of a sudden I see this blonde, walking to the on the left side, on the other side of the street, and like, I feel my neck, while I'm driving, like going like this. Whoa, not something that my wife particularly really cares about, but some people do. I got a good look real good. Looking is certainly okay in my relationship. There's never any problem with that, but it is a problem in a lot of relationships, and there's a lot of people who feel very constricted, um,
Right,
and that can only lead, constriction and restriction, lead to people pushing boundaries.
right.
They don't result in positive result. What do you think, Sarah?
Well, I wanted to chime in on the neuroscience of why a guy looks. So, ladies out there, you know how you get that dopamine hit after you eat that chocolate bar? That's actually real. So men get the very same dopamine hit when they see a beautiful woman. That beautiful woman can be you, or it could be somebody that he sees out and about. So there's something hardwired into that brain. Women are kind of like the chocolate bar for men, okay? So it's something that I would say, even though it's hard not to take personally sometimes, don't take it personally. And if you do, I would say look deeper into what's going on here because I think attachment patterns. Were you securely attached when you were a child? Or did something tragic happen so that when this happens, your mind is feeling some kind of abandonment? It
Yeah,
triggers.
and the jealousy demon just comes out like a, in droves. I mean, not one demon, but like a flood of demons. Oh no, that this is terrible. I'm jealous. Ah, what's
Yeah,
he doing? Why isn't he looking at me? Why is he looking at these other, women? And the truth is he's looking at these other women because they look good,
but
and there's some women who go out there every day, and they put themselves together and they look good. And it, we're not the code of your ethics, and I'm certainly not the code of
no.
your ethics. But for me, in my view, it's okay to look, and looking is free, and
And and
mingling is free, and it's good and it's healthy, and we
and
have to be comfortable in our relationships. We
all
have
right,
to know.
an important question. Does it make you love your wife any less when you happen to take a peek at the blonde?
And
Does it?
so it speaks to the state of your relationship, which is what you and I spend numerous hours with other people talking
Yeah.
about. These
But,
kinds of things, jealousy. I found him talking to this other lady. He
right.
was writing to this lady on the internet. What does that mean? I'm jealous. I feel terrible. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't look at me. He doesn't care about me. That Woo! All that,
That's
all
a
that.
different thing. But if you have like a loving, pretty good nurturing relationship, does it mean that a guy loves his wife any less if he happens to check out the blonde, either in her Ferrari or walking down the street if he has his Chevy Chase moment? Remember in Vacation where
Yeah,
he's looking at Christy
absolutely,
Brinkley, right?
absolutely.
So every guy has his Chevy Chase moments, but that doesn't mean that he cares for his wife any less. That's what I believe. Do you believe that as a man?
Yeah, because I believe that if you're in control of it, and you're not like some promiscuous asshole,
Exactly.
who's going out on their spouse,
Exactly.
and cheating, the whole world, and all that. I mean, this is whether we like it or not. Guys do think about other women. They just do. They're everywhere. They're in advertisements. What sells? We know TNA. TNA sells everything, and it's still used to sell everything.
And this past
I mean,
week,
look, yeah,
T-
we got Miss Sweeney,
yes,
there walking in her jeans,
did.
and tell me that people weren't looking at as she zipped her zipper up.
Yeah,
I mean,
she did.
I would say that there were some women who were attracted to that as
She's
well.
laying on a car, zipping her zipper up. Yeah, that I think that's going to pique most men's attention, and I think a
And
lot of women are going to look at that and say, "Damn, I wish I looked like that."
so let's go even further. Let's take this a little further, Sarah. Let's take this into sex. Okay, let's go, spicy Fridays. Let's take it.
Yeah.
So you're in a relationship and you've been married for a long time, or maybe not. Maybe you've been married 6 months, or maybe you're not married. You're in a relationship. You've had, plenty of sex, or maybe not. And,
You
uh,
can be
and
married
uh,
for a long time and have not plenty of sex.
say that again.
You can be married for a long time and
Oh,
still
absolutely. Well, that's a absolute. That's an absolute. And there are many people who are experiencing that. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. It's
yes.
a very important topic. We promise we'll cover that topic because it's something we hear about all the time. But what if we pose this? Because whether we pose this or not, it doesn't mean, that it matters or doesn't matter. But, you're having sex with your wife, you're having sex with your girlfriend, and you're thinking about somebody else, or your wife, was reading, like as many are in the beaches of America during the summer of 25. They're reading all these romance novels, which is a $1 billion business. And they soak them up, and they're reading about these hunks, and they're getting, they're definitely getting turned on. I mean, they might be sitting there calm on the beach, but what they are is they're inside that book, in their own minds, thinking about what it might be, to be Lady Chatterley's lover, in 100 different ways, in the
Exactly.
modern times, in the old times. There's some people who love that old stuff. They
Yeah.
love that rugged, rogue guy, hunter, who's out there, whatever.
Ellen,
But the
that whole
main thing is it okay? Now, from a religious point of view, there are great extremes in the things that we're talking about, Sarah. There are the extremes, traditional monogamy. People expect, them to be thinking about, you're thinking about somebody else. Is that okay? What's the difference whether it's okay or not? Even the most religious people who try not to because of their faith, and that's and we all respect that. But the truth is that it's difficult. That's why, many religious authorities tell them, try not to think, try to think clean thoughts and all that, because people don't always think things. They think dirty thoughts.
place.
The human mind, thinks dirty thoughts. We try not to. People who, out there, all of you out there listening, you might be thinking, hey, Zev, he has a dirty mind. Sarah, she got a dirty mind. No, we're pretty normal. We're pretty normal. And what we've got to try to do is be normal, and set up a situation in your relationship, that's normal, that where you don't feel constricted, you don't feel restricted, because in my experience, those kinds of things, they lead to really, negative outcomes, the kind that you don't want, more than mingling, big time flirtations and possibly stepping out in the wrong direction over the line.
What do you think?
Is it okay, Sarah? Is it okay to think about somebody else while you're having sex? If that turns you on, if that gets you going. I mean, look at all the Viagra and Cialis that, all these guys are snorting, every day. I mean, there's more there's Vialis, Viagra and Cialis raining from the sky,
There
because
is. There is.
males, have trouble at, different parts of their lives pretty soon sometimes, not being able to get it up and get it going and get it done. And
Yeah.
so they use fantasy, and they start, look, magazines, dirty magazines, been around for a long time. Beautiful pictures, not so beautiful pictures. The advent of free porno has become it is beyond off the charts. Every day, every night, everything. There are men, women too, who are looking at porno. There's going to be no judgment here today about whether that's right or wrong or good or bad or all that. The only thing that I don't like about porno, and that, a public service announcement, is that some of that porno is unfortunately trafficking, sexual trafficking of minors, and that's not a good thing.
No.
And it's a bit abhorrent, and but it finds its way because there's some dirty characters out there, and we know that.
Yeah.
But using stimulus to turn yourself on, to have sex, to have a reasonable sex life, if for some reason you're not able to, get it done anymore, you're not able to work it out. So, there are alternatives. There are alternatives in your relationship. Some people, perhaps you don't need to have an open marriage, to explore sex toys. romance enhancement products, as they're called.
Romance enhancement.
What used to be sex toys that you bought at the bus station, at this dirty store next to the bus station, now you buy, on these beautiful sites, that are out there, and there are some lovely sites, and I've certainly recommended them to many women, and men to enhance their relationship. People, they frown about other people who are into kink. Hey, you know what? The kink makes them have a great, sex life, and we don't want to frown on other people.
No,
Kink is not deviant.
no, it's not.
Deviant deviant, as Dr. Ruth used to say, the God bless her memory, would say, everything is good except for one thing. She hated it. She didn't want you to call about it. Don't call me about bestiality. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to hear about it, and I'm not going to talk about it. And that's already crossing the line into
Right,
sexual deviance, and there's plenty of sexual deviance, but we need to understand what the line is. What is the
right.
line? You
What
know
is
that
mine?
that
So,
keeps your that keep it's important for a married couple to keep their sexual relationship in a reasonable level, and when it drops off and when it completely shuts down, it shuts down a major aspect of your relationship, of life, of feeling good, of like that guy that walks into his corporation, in the Viagra commercial, and he's strutting, whatever, because he
yeah,
just he just did it all night. He just did
hey,
it.
baby.
And
Yeah,
he's got that, he's strutting and happy, and people are looking at him like, oh, he definitely got, he like,
he got it.
it was a very smart commercial, and Viagra probably, increased their sales immensely from that. But it's a true thing. People who, are feeling like their spouse cares about them, and I mean, turn some of this angst, this relationship angst inward. Talk about some other, exploring some new options, increase your horizons. A romance enhancement product, it can really, help satisfaction,
REP, a rep.
help you along, and it's not something that's dirty or anything like that. Again, there are some really, and I would suggest that you go high end, on some of these things, because you know there's some really lousy products. But if something like that can help your relationship, um, maybe talking about it, or going into a store. The stores aren't, these seedy places anymore. There's some, beautiful, there's some nice stores that you go into. The problem is that, we're stigmatized about what's clean and what's dirty. Right, Sarah? I mean, you grew up, that's
Childhood.
dirty. You filthy, you're dirty. We have to make what we need is for our relationships to be healthy, especially in the sex department. And if all of a sudden you see some beautiful woman and it turns you on or whatever, and then you go home and excuse my expression out there, bang your wife, all night long, and to her great satisfaction and good feeling, then whoopee doo. The two of you
Yeah,
have increased your relationship 1,000 times. And
I
please
actually, yeah,
comment. We're looking for comments from people. If you don't like what we're saying, we're thick-skinned around here. Sarah and
yeah,
I are,
drop us some
seasoned
comments.
seasoned therapists, and we've heard it all. Every once in a while, we hear something new.
Yeah, once in a while, but to speak to the idea of inspiration outside, I actually knew I worked with a couple that did this very thing. Now, this was before I was a psychologist. I worked in high tech, and there was a married couple that worked with me at AT&T Wireless, and they would actually talk about how they would talk at lunch, with groups about how they could look all they wanted. They could look at anybody, and then they would use that as inspiration to come home and have an all night long session. And everybody was in awe of them at the time because this was like a revolutionary idea. But they
That
were
they had, that they were able to be mature enough to talk about this without jealousy and without, and not without thinking that it's dirty, and without,
exactly,
without all that,
yeah.
hoopla.
We were all in our, we were all in our early 20s at the time. Well, they may have been older, but we were
And
all in awe that they could do this, and we kind of saw them as role models.
because they were looking for ways to keep their relationship healthy. They were, and they found it.
They
I mean,
did.
unfortunately, to the dismay of other people, because they said, wow, you shouldn't talk about that. You shouldn't even think about that. You shouldn't think about another woman. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't, shouldn't, no, no, no. Again, when we do that, we know what that produces. It doesn't, it usually doesn't have the outcomes that you're looking for.
When you tell somebody they shouldn't do something, they often get curious about it.
Right,
Isn't
right.
that right?
Yeah, 50 Shades of Horny, is what they do. I mean, what are those movies about? Why are they out there? Because of what Sarah and I are talking about today, because people are exploring new horizons. I'm not telling you to go out and buy a whip. I would never do that, but there are people who have, the damnedest, kinds of fantasies, and they like to live them out. Couples dress up, they tell their, I want you to try to do this. I want you to, this is creativity. This is how people keep their lives, their relationships refreshed. And if you have an open, communication line, not necessarily an open marriage, we're not talking about that. That's a whole nother, thing. And that's another discussion, which we're going to have here on this channel, because I actually talked to this woman who made this movie about polyamory. It was a really interesting interview. I think it's still available, and you can still access it. I found it to be very interesting. It's not something that I was interested in, but it was for some who can handle it. They were handling it, and look, whether we like it or not, there's a lot of it out there, and there, nowadays there's all these signs, that people have. I don't know, what is it, a pineapple, a flamingo on your lawn. There's something, that tells what, who's a polyamorous, swinger. There's all these nonverbal things where people communicate on their houses, what it is and what it isn't. But again, that's another topic.
I
We'll
had
get.
no idea. I'm in the dark. I wouldn't even know what that looked
Isn't
like.
that amazing? I mean, it's, it's a thing. Many, people are into it. We're not talking about that necessarily today. Today, we're talking about inside your relationship, whether you're married or not, and, there's fidelity, but there's also room to grow, room to fantasize, room to, to turn yourself, and your partner on. And sometimes, it's not just the regular thing that we think. We think we're turning our partner on. We're rubbing them in some place. That we think, oh, they're so hot that, and they're going like, could you stop rubbing me there, like you're hurting me.
Yeah,
And it's hard to communicate about sex. A lot of people, here's how they communicate about sex. They go, sex. They go, sex. They whisper. They whisper. They start whispering. We can't whisper. We got to talk openly. This is 2025. It's better if you want a fulfilling relationship with your spouse. It's important to talk about these kinds of things, not to rebuke each other, but to, perhaps open up your horizons a bit, so that maybe you can get the satisfaction that you want. What do you think, Sarah?
I agree. But I wanted to talk about some of the hard no's that I think are hard no's in relationships. For example, I'm going to tell you a really off the wall story. My dad was engaged to a woman before he met my mom, and this woman would sit on my grandfather's lap and she would rub his bald head right in front of my grandmother.
Goodness
And she,
gracious. Some people go for lap dances at the strip club.
she would he would be sitting in his recliner and this lady would jump onto my grandpa's lap, rub his head, and say, "Oh, Ronald, I just adore you. I just adore who you are."
Well, I'll
And
bet you Ronald got a charge out of that, right? I mean, biologically, Ronald's going to get a charge out of that, right?
probably did, but thankfully, my dad woke up to the idea that his future fiance should probably not be doing that.
I understand. Here's another one. Did you bring this one up? I remember I went to this bar mitzvah of this kid, and the father invited like the football cheerleaders, to the thing, and he wanted them to sit on this 13-year-old's lap in front of all
Oh,
the family and all the thing. And I'm watching this, and I'm saying to myself, "Hey, Dad, you need some help. Somebody should have helped you out. This poor, embarrassed 13-year-old. I mean, to say he turned red, would be an understatement. And I think that he probably, who knows? Who knows? Any man, what was going on in the middle of this auditorium were things that every man in the room was like thinking, well, I sure maybe would like to be that guy, that little bar mitzvah boy. But, to talk, there's appropriate and there's inappropriate. And there's what Sarah said, hard nose. And you only know about the hard nose if you discuss them. You don't slap your spouse, because they jumped on a hard nose. It's good to say, you know what, that's a hard no for me. When you did that, it didn't make me feel good. And,
no.
and you know what, if you do that again, it's going to make me feel even worse. And
Well,
here's why, and here's why, and here's why. It's not something you should know. Nobody tells us this stuff. That's why Sarah and Zev are people who are able to talk about this stuff. And there are a lot of people who aren't able to. I had a TV show where I talked about this, and people had all kinds of reactions. Some very good, some very negative. But the truth is that somebody's got to talk about it. I mean, Dr. Ruth talked about it, other people. And so on this segment in Discover Your Amazing Edge, this is one part of what we do. We deal with relationships. And when you deal with relationships, let me tell you something. We talk maturity. We talk, where are you? Are you like still listening to your daddy, or are you, talking in a mature way to your spouse, because it's about the two of you. It's not about all the voices of the past and all the stupid messages that you got from other people. You have to you want your relationship to work. And the only way to make it work is to experiment, explore, and make sure that each other is comfortable with the boundaries, that you're pushing. And if you're pushing some boundaries, it's good to have the discussion, I'm bored. I'm bored. Hello, I'm bored. I need something else. I need something. What do you need? Well, there's a discussion right there.
yeah.
There's a mature, healthy discussion to be had. And I think
And your spouse can meet your needs if they want to. Go to your spouse first. You would be surprised at what they might do if you asked.
the problem is that we're not wired to have those discussions. We're wired to stay away from those discussions because those discussions speak to dirty, and we've been told they're dirty. We grew up, they're dirty. This is, and I mean, we're talking about the male and female body and what it does to your endorphins, and what it does when you open a page and you see a naked woman, if you're a guy, and vice versa for some women. I mean, we all get turned on by what we get turned on, and it would be nice, for your spouse to know what turns you on, don't you think? I mean, if your spouse knows what turns you on, guess what? You might get some.
You
If you
must.
don't, if they don't know, then they're going to do these things, that might hurt you, and then you're afraid to tell him. He thinks he gave you the greatest orgasm of your life. And really what he did was like he caused you irritation for like 3 days.
Oh, yeah, you definitely need to talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of things. There's hygiene issues that keep people away from doing things in their, in the bounds of their relationship, and their what some people are holy relationship, which marriage is for many people, and or however you view your relationship. Um, it's about boundaries. It's about the body. It's about your mind. We have these things on board, and these are the things that we have to try to understand. And I think discussion, pushing the boundaries a little bit inside of a relationship can get you where you need to go. And look, we're going to talk about a lot of things as we go into the new season. Sarah and I were off a little bit for a few weeks, but
Yep.
as we can see September in the corner of our eye, we
Yes.
have a lot of stuff happening. Over the summer, Sarah and I have been very busy putting together an amazing website. We recorded seminars that you're going to be able to access, some on relationships, some on personal development. We have programs, individual and group, that you'll be able to access. Sarah and I are very real. We're the real deal. When we work with people who we work with, it's a personalized thing. It's not, some kind of generic status quo thing. We're interested in you. And are unique, and
That's right.
your uniqueness is the reason we're in business, because we speak to your uniqueness, and that's what's important to us. We're not trying to throw this globe. Sure, we do keynote speeches and we talk, in a global and generic kind of way. But when we're working with you specifically, whether it be in the two departments, whether it be in relationships, with couples trying to get their lives together, or with a person who's trying to, who's so stuck and procrastinating so much and so sick that they're ready to give up. We don't want you to give up. We want you to get the support that you want and you need, and that's what we're here for. And we're going to be reaching out and telling you, and you'll be seeing on this new amazing website. It's good websites take they take time, um,
We do.
and so we've invested a lot of time in putting it together, and we're looking forward in early September to the launch, and you'll be able to access our services. And you'll see, but in the meantime, we're going to do two podcasts. We're going to do two podcasts a week, in September. Right now, we're gonna do one or the other. We'll see how it goes. This is August. It's busy. I'm going to the beach. Thank goodness. I can't wait, to go to the beach. Maybe I can, sit on the beach and watch the babes walk by, and get all turned on, whoopee doo,
What
you
they
know,
do.
and say, hey, Deb, I mean, our relationship is mature enough for me to say, hey, Deb, did you see that guy? That's a good looking guy, and Debbie might say to me, no shit, like, yeah, not that I'm attracted to him, but I'm big enough to say, hey, get a whole eyeball full of that, Debbie.
Yeah,
'Cause I know
exactly.
I know what's going to work. What's going to happen when you do, and I encourage you in a mature way. And I'm accepting. That's what we're talking about. Expanding your horizons. So, anyway, please read our book. Again, it's Discover Your Amazing Edge. It's available in hardback, softcover, and on Kindle. You can
Yeah.
download it. Um, it really speaks to many aspects of personal development, and we also have an ebook on relationships, which if you come when you do come to some of our seminars, we'll be offering that to you. I mean, 75 pages, full jammed with ideas and things to make your relationship stronger
Yes.
and happier, more fulfilling, and all that. So anyway, Sarah, this has been fun
Always.
today. Yeah, always fun. And we'll be back next week for Spicy Friday.
Yeah.
Um, I'm taking the grandkids to swimming lessons on Tuesday, so I kind of laid off the other podcast, but that's going to end in a couple of weeks. And we'll be doing, again, Tuesdays and Fridays. Tuesdays for personal development, Fridays for relationships and sex,
Yeah.
in some kind of way, shape, or form. So, like, hopefully you think that Zev and Sarah give good sex. I hope we do. And we hope we give it to you and that you can take it to your weekend. That's why we do it on Fridays, because we want you to enjoy your weekend. You know,
Yeah.
Fridays with Zev and Sarah. I hope that you feel that we've been open and that we've been fair in our presentation. Please send us feedback. We love the feedback that some people have sent. Some people have sent some pretty tough stuff, you know, but again, you're looking at two very thick-skinned individuals. Say whatever you want. All it does is increase our quality of our effectiveness.
And also, we promote a shame-free environment. So don't
Absolutely.
worry about, some deep, dark secret if you need to get it off your chest in the session. We
And if you want to have that, and like you know, you just pray that if you want to have that a conversation that you're not able to have, you know, with your spouse, we can really help you fortify that conversation. Those are the conversations that make for good relationships. So,
exactly.
and unfortunately, those are the relationships that those are the conversations that a lot of relationships don't have
That is true. And we can help.
because there's fear. There's fear. We don't want to bring it up. We don't want to open up that can of worms. You know, the Pandora's box. We don't want that. But we do. Sometimes we have to open up the can of worms. We have to open up Pandora's box. And you know what happens? Good things, not bad things. So feel that you can confide in us because many have, and many have effectively moved their lives forward. So anyway, we'll wrap it up. Sarah, thank you, and
Have.
I'm wishing
Thank
you a happy
you.
weekend
Happy
and
weekend to everyone
happy
out
weekend to all, and you know, and our thumbs up to you in your life. You
there.
know,
Thumbs up.
advance yourself, progress, and push the boundaries a bit.
Yes.
And stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.
All
You have
right.
a
See you next time, guys.